If you have no money, you do not have freedom. You have permission disguised as independence. One emergency, one boss, one rent payment, one family crisis, and suddenly your choices belong to whoever has the resources you do not. That is the part broke men do not want to admit. They say, "I am free," but they cannot leave the job they hate. They cannot reject the client who disrespects them. They cannot move out of the environment that weakens them. They cannot say no to family pressure because they still depend on family money. They cannot take a calculated risk because one small financial hit would collapse the month. That is not freedom. That is conditional movement. That is permission. And poverty is not just a financial condition, it is a command structure. Here is the question most men avoid. How many people can control your behavior because they control something you need? That is the hidden mechanism. Not money as luxury, money as defense, not money as image, money as oxygen, not money as status, money as the wall between your ambition and another man's control. And this is not just philosophy, it shows up in the data. The Federal Reserve's survey of household economics and decision-making showed that 63% of adults in the United States said they could cover a $400 emergency using cash or its equivalent, which also means a large minority could not cover it cleanly without borrowing, selling something, using credit, or placing themselves under strain. That is not just a financial statistic, that is a control statistic. Because if $400 can destabilize your life, then $400 is not just an expense. It is a command. It can command your mood. It can command your sleep. It can command your posture at work. It can command whether you speak up or stay quiet. It can command whether you negotiate or accept bad terms. It can command whether you walk away or lower your head. A man may have opinions. A man may have ambition. A man may have pride. But an emergency does not care about his pride. A bill does not care about his potential. A landlord does not care about his dreams. A boss does not care about his self-image. The world tests freedom through pressure. And if one small pressure can force you to beg, borrow, obey, delay, or surrender, then your freedom is not structural yet. It is only emotional. And emotional freedom collapses the moment reality sends an invoice. Now look at the opposite pattern. Before Damon John became known as the founder of FUBU and one of the investors on Shark Tank, he was not building from comfort. He was building from pressure. His company profile notes that he moved the business into his mother's house after taking out a $100,000 mortgage on it. FUBU later became a global brand with over $6 billion in product sales. Business Insider also reported that John launched FUBU in 1992 after his mother mortgaged her home to support the venture, while he split time between FUBU and working at Red Lobster. The lesson is not mortgage a house. Do not romanticize that risk. The lesson is resourcefulness under pressure. John did not wait for institutions to declare him ready. He did not wait until the market gave him permission. He did not wait until every gatekeeper approved the idea. He turned limited resources into visible proof. Clothes, branding, street-level demand, product placement, momentum. He was not merely asking people to believe in an idea. He built evidence that the idea could move. That is the difference between being broke and being helpless. Broke is a condition. Helpless is when you stop converting pressure into action. Many men confuse the two. They think having no money means they have no move. But the first move is not always money. Sometimes the first move is skill, then proof, then an offer, then contact, then money, then leverage. This is where most men lose before they are even defeated. They keep waiting for confidence. They keep waiting for support. They keep waiting for someone to notice the pain, understand the struggle, respect the effort, and finally give them a clean path forward. But the world does not reward your private suffering. The world responds to proof. Psychologist Albert Bandura's work on self-efficacy explains that one of the strongest sources of belief in your own ability is mastery experience. In plain language, successful action builds belief because it gives your mind evidence that you can influence outcomes. That matters because broke men often wait to feel confident before acting. But confidence built on emotion collapses under pressure. Confidence built on mastery becomes harder to break. You do not become free by saying, "I believe in myself." You become freer by building evidence that you can survive pressure, create value, earn money, and protect your options. That is the real game. And the stakes are brutal. A broke man can be commanded from multiple directions. A man with no savings obeys emergencies. A man with one income obeys the employer. A man with no skill obeys the market. A man with no proof obeys gatekeepers. A man with no assets obeys time. A man with no options obeys whoever offers relief first. And every one of these chains can be invisible. You may not feel controlled because no one is standing over you with orders. But control does not always sound like a command. Sometimes control sounds like, "You cannot afford to leave." Sometimes it sounds like, "Just tolerate it for now." Sometimes it sounds like, "You need this job." Sometimes it sounds like, "You do not have enough saved." Sometimes it sounds like, "You are not ready." Sometimes it sounds like, "Be realistic." Sometimes it sounds like, "What choice do you have?" That last question is the sound of financial captivity. What choice do you have? The man with no reserves has fewer choices. The man with no earning power has fewer choices. The man with no assets has fewer choices. The man with no proof has fewer choices. The man with no reputation has fewer choices. And when choices disappear, control appears. This is why society's comforting stories about poverty are dangerous. Society often tells broke men that poverty makes them humble, noble, grounded, and pure. That is a comforting lie. Poverty does not automatically make a man noble. It can make him reactive, desperate, easy to pressure, easy to shame, easy to buy, easy to command. This does not mean poor people are bad. It means financial fragility is dangerous. There is nothing noble about being unable to protect your mission. There is nothing pure about being forced to tolerate disrespect because you cannot afford to walk away. There is nothing masculine about needing permission from whoever pays the bills. There is nothing powerful about being one emergency away from surrender. This is not an insult. It is a diagnosis. If you are broke, the answer is not shame. The answer is construction. Do not chase money to look rich. Build money so fewer people can command you. That is the payoff most men miss. Money is not the goal. Money is the wall between your ambition and another man's control. Once you understand that, money stops being shallow. It becomes strategic. Not watches, not cars, not pretending, not buying status to impress people who did not help you build. Money becomes oxygen, defense, optionality, time, negotiating power. A man with savings can think longer. A man with earning power can recover faster. A man with proof can enter the market with more force. A man with assets can depend less on one paycheck. A man with options can say no without collapsing. And this is where the old identity has to die. The broke man says, "I just need people to understand my situation." The strategic man says, "I need to reduce the number of people who can control my situation." The broke man says, "I hate being pressured." The strategic man asks, where am I structurally vulnerable? The broke man says, I want freedom. The strategic man asks, what must I build so freedom has a financial foundation? Because freedom without structure is a feeling. Freedom with reserves, skill, proof, assets, and options becomes real. If you are serious about this and you are tired of consuming hard truths without changing your structure, then pay attention. Most men watch videos, feel a temporary surge, then return to the same weak position, same job dependence, same debt pressure, same lack of proof, same fragile month. If you continue like that, the truth becomes entertainment instead of transformation. Inside Patreon, I go deeper into the operating systems that cannot always be said in public, the audits, the frameworks, the unfiltered breakdowns, the strategic questions that force you to stop hiding from your own weak points. If you want comfort, stay where you are. If you want construction, enter the room. The decision is yours. Because power is not in begging men to act. Power is in making them confront the cost of not acting. Now understand the hierarchy of financial control. First, the man with no savings obeys emergencies. This is the lowest level. A tire breaks, a laptop dies, a bill arrives, income is delayed, a medical cost appears, a family crisis lands at the worst possible moment, and suddenly the entire month is under threat. This man cannot think strategically because his mind is occupied by immediate survival. He reacts, he borrows, he sells, he begs, he delays, he accepts bad terms, not because he wants to, because the emergency has command. And this is the humiliating part. The emergency does not need to be large. It only needs to be larger than your buffer. That is why $400 matters. It is not the number itself. It is what the number reveals. It reveals whether your freedom has a foundation or whether it is just a mood you hold when nothing has gone wrong. A man without a buffer is not planning his life. He is waiting to be interrupted. He may talk about vision, purpose, discipline, masculinity, faith, ambition, and destiny. But if one broken phone can destroy his week, then his structure is not ready for the life he claims he wants. The first act of financial rebellion is building a buffer, even a small one, $500, $1,000, 1 month of survival, then 3 months. This is not glamorous, but a buffer is quiet power. It gives you breathing room, and breathing room gives you better decisions. Because panic makes men cheap. Panic makes men agreeable. Panic makes men accept offers they should reject. Panic makes men apologize to people who are using them. Panic makes men tolerate disrespect because the alternative looks too expensive. A small buffer does not make you rich. It makes you harder to shake. That is the first wall. But after you build the first wall, a deeper question appears. What happens when the emergency is not a broken object, but a person? Because the second level of control is not the bill, it is the employer. The man with one income obeys the employer. If one person, one company, one manager, one client, or one institution controls all your income, then they control your tolerance. You may tell yourself you are independent, but watch what happens when your manager disrespects you. Watch what happens when the company changes the schedule. Watch what happens when the client delays payment. Watch what happens when someone with authority speaks to you like you are replaceable. If leaving means financial collapse, then your anger has a leash on it. You can complain, you can vent, you can tell yourself you are not the kind of man who tolerates disrespect. But if every bill depends on one gate, then that gatekeeper owns more of your behavior than you want to admit. This does not mean quit recklessly. Only fools confuse ego with strategy. Walking away with no plan is not power. It is emotional theater. The strategic move is not to rage against the employer. The strategic move is to reduce the employer's monopoly over your survival. One skill, one offer, one proof pack, one small client, one side income, one marketable ability. The first dollar earned outside the main gate is not just income, it is evidence. It tells your mind, I am not trapped inside one system. It tells the market, I can create value outside permission. It tells your employer, even if they never hear it, that their grip is no longer absolute. This is why earning power matters more than motivation. Motivation says, I want a better life. Earning power says, I can create a better position. Motivation gives you emotion, earning power gives you movement, and movement is what changes the game. But here is where the next chain appears. A man with no skill obeys the market. The market does not pay for your pain. It does not pay because you had a hard childhood. It does not pay because your family misunderstood you. It does not pay because your friends doubted you. It does not pay because society ignored you. The market is cold. It pays for value. That is the part weak men call unfair, because they want sympathy to function like currency. But sympathy does not pay rent. Sympathy does not build leverage. Sympathy does not make strangers trust you. Sympathy does not turn you into a man with options. If you have no monetizable skill, you are dependent on low-leverage labor or someone else's permission. That is not a moral failure. It is economic exposure. And exposure must be corrected. The answer is skill. Not random learning. Not collecting courses. Not watching success videos until your brain feels productive. Not pretending that information is transformation. One practical skill that can feed you. Copywriting, sales outreach, lead generation, video editing, YouTube scripting, thumbnail design, landing pages, artificial intelligence workflow setup. Choose one. Train it daily. Build outputs. Attach it to a painful problem. Then bring it to the market. A skill is not just a way to make money. A skill is a weapon against helplessness. Because once you can create value on command, you are no longer waiting for rescue. You can enter rooms differently. You can speak differently. You can negotiate differently. You can recover faster. You can endure rejection without collapsing, because rejection is no longer proof that you are finished. It is data. This is where Bandura's principle becomes practical. You do not build belief by staring at the mirror and repeating powerful words. You build belief through mastery experience, through action, through attempts, through visible evidence, through small wins stacked until your nervous system understands that you are not powerless. Confidence without evidence is fragile. Confidence with proof becomes harder to break. And proof is the next level, because the man with no proof obeys gatekeepers. Even if you have skill, if no one can see it, you still depend on someone believing your claim. That is weak. No one owes you trust. No one owes you belief. No one owes you a chance because you feel ready. The world is full of men saying they can do the work. The strategic man shows evidence, a portfolio, a case study, a before and after breakdown, a sample project, a clear offer page, a testimonial, a public breakdown, a result. These are not decorations. They are financial defense. They help strangers trust faster. They reduce the power of gatekeepers. They let you approach the market with evidence instead of pleading. Most men hate this because proof removes the fantasy. As long as you have no proof, you can tell yourself you are secretly talented. You can say people just have not discovered you yet. You can blame the market, the algorithm, the economy, your family, your city, your school, your lack of connections. But proof forces confrontation. It asks one brutal question. Can you produce something valuable enough for another person to care? That question burns illusions. And that is good. A man cannot build power while protecting every comforting lie about himself. He must be willing to see the gap. The gap between what he believes he deserves and what he can actually prove. The gap between ambition and evidence. The gap between identity and output. That gap is not there to shame you. It is there to show you where to build. If you are serious about building this instead of just admiring it from a distance, this is the moment where most men separate themselves. They watch, they nod, they feel exposed. Then they close the video and return to the same structure. Same weak income. Same invisible skill. Same empty proof. Same excuses dressed as philosophy. If you continue like that, nothing changes except your vocabulary. Inside Patreon, I break down the deeper operating systems behind leverage, proof, positioning, discipline, and strategic self-command. Not polished motivation, not public-friendly softness. The private frameworks. The hard audits. The unfiltered material for men who are done being entertained by the truth and want to be shaped by it. If you are serious, enter. If you are not, keep collecting insight while your structure stays weak. The decision is yours. Now understand the fifth chain. The man with no assets obeys time. If all your money comes only from your direct labor, then every dollar requires more hours. That means time owns you. In the beginning, labor is necessary. You may have to trade time for money. Good. There is no shame in work. There is shame in refusing to turn work into leverage. The long-term goal is to convert labor into assets. Skills are assets. Proof is an asset. A reputation is an asset. A client base is an asset. A content library is an asset. A system is an asset. Savings are an asset. Investments can become assets. Assets reduce the need to restart from zero every day. They store power, they store trust, they store attention, they store value, they make future movement easier. A broke man often has no stored power, no stored money, no stored proof, no stored trust, no stored audience, no stored audience, no stored audience, no stored systems. So every day begins as a fight for oxygen. That is exhausting. And exhaustion makes men obedient. When a man is tired enough, he stops asking what is possible and starts asking what is easiest. When a man is under enough pressure, he stops choosing strategically and starts grabbing relief. That is how control works. It does not always break you with force. Sometimes it drains you until obedience feels like rest. This is why assets matter, not because they make you look sophisticated, because they reduce the number of days where survival forces the agenda. A man with stored power can pause. He can think, he can refuse, he can wait, he can reposition. He can choose a harder path because he is not starving for immediate relief. That is what most men really mean when they say they want freedom. They do not just want more money, they want fewer forced decisions. They want fewer situations where their mouth says yes, while their soul knows the answer should be no. They want fewer moments where they accept disrespect because rent is coming. They want fewer days where their ambition is negotiated down by pressure. So here is the financial obedience audit. Ask this with brutal honesty. Who can ruin my month with one decision? If one boss, one client, one family member, one bill, one landlord, or one emergency can ruin your month, you have found a control point. Do not get emotional, get precise. Name the point of control. What expense makes me emotionally submissive? Maybe rent is too high. Maybe debt payments are too heavy. Maybe lifestyle spending forces you to keep tolerating situations you hate. Maybe you bought symbols of freedom while your actual freedom stayed weak. What debt forces me to tolerate disrespect? Debt is not just a number. It can become a leash. It can turn a proud man into a quiet man. It can make him accept what he should challenge. It can make him stay where he should leave. What skill could increase my earning power fastest? Do not answer with fantasy. Do not say real estate if you have no capital, no knowledge, and no plan. Do not say business if you cannot sell, write, edit, negotiate, create, code, manage, design, or generate leads. Answer with the skill you can start practicing this week. What proof could make me harder to ignore? A sample, a case study, a portfolio, an outreach message, a public breakdown, a clear offer, a visible result. What asset can eventually reduce my dependence on labor? Savings, reputation, systems, content, client relationships, investments, tools. These questions are uncomfortable because they reveal who already has command over your life. Good. You cannot remove a chain you refuse to name. Now comes the identity shift. Stop seeing money as greed. See money as protection. Stop seeing savings as boring. See savings as oxygen. Stop seeing skill as optional. See skill as weaponry. Stop seeing proof as marketing. See proof as trust defense. Stop seeing assets as something for rich people later. See assets as stored power you begin building now. The broke man says, I need people to understand my situation. The strategic man says, I need to reduce the number of people who can control my situation. The broke man says, I hate being pressured. The strategic man asks, where am I structurally vulnerable? The broke man says, I want freedom. The strategic man asks, what must I build? So freedom has a financial foundation. That is the difference. Because freedom without structure is a feeling. Freedom with reserves, skill, proof, assets, and options becomes real. So here is your practical command. First, calculate your survival number. How much does it cost to stay alive and operational for 1 month? Housing, food, utilities, transportation, phone, internet, debt minimums, basic work tools. Know the number. Not because budgeting is exciting, because your survival number tells you the size of the cage. Second, build your first emergency wall. Start with $500, then $1,000, then 1 month, then 3 months. Do not despise small buffers. Small buffers are the first bricks of independence. Third, choose one skill that increases earning power. Not someday. This week. Pick it, schedule it, practice it, create proof. Fourth, build a minimum proof pack. 3 samples, 1 before and after, 1 short case study, 1 clear offer, 1 outreach message. Fifth, create market contact. Send the offer to relevant people. Track response. Treat rejection as data. Sixth, stop status spending. Do not try to look free while you are still financially fragile. Every dollar spent to impress people is a dollar removed from your wall. Seventh, start building assets. Skill, proof, reputation, savings, systems, client relationships. These are your escape infrastructure. Now listen to the deeper warning. If you do not build this wall, someone else's resources will keep shaping your decisions. You may call it compromise. You may call it patience. You may call it being realistic. But often it is obedience. Obedience to the paycheck. Obedience to the debt. Obedience to the emergency. Obedience to the family member with money. Obedience to the landlord. Obedience to the client. Obedience to the market because you have not built enough value. This is why broke men are easier to control than they think. Not because they lack character, because their structure gives other people leverage. and the only answer is to build your own. Cash reserves, earning power, proof, assets, options. That is personal defense. That is practical psychology. That is Machiavellian realism. Men follow resources. Resources shape allegiance, and those who control resources often control the behavior of those who lack them. So do not chase money to look rich. Build money so fewer people can command you. Do not build wealth for applause. Build it for oxygen. Do not build skill for ego. Build it for leverage. Do not build proof for vanity. Build it to reduce dependence on belief. Do not build assets because it sounds sophisticated. Build them because time will own you if you do not. The final command is this: money is not the goal, money is the wall. The wall between your ambition and another man's control. If that wall is thin, build it. If that wall has holes, repair it. If that wall does not exist, start with the first brick today. Because the world does not ask whether you feel free. It tests how easily you can be forced. And if you want real freedom, stop defending your pride and start building your defenses.